And I see this a lot in early stage clients where they come in and we actually do a lot of the things to fix the immediate issues, and they're still working nonstop. And it's like I have to make them take a step back and figure out, what's actually happening. And I like to call it superhero syndrome, where a lot of times we will create problems in order to hop in and be the superhero and feel like, hey, we fixed this problem, we had a good day's work, we did it. But really, we just fixed a problem we started.
And I have Alexys with me, who is the queen of operations. Would that be an accurate title? I don't know.
I'll take it, sure.
Yeah, so Alexys, today's topic is going to be about the overwhelmed entrepreneur wearing multiple hats in their businesses, and how do we find our way out of this chaos that we call our business, and what are your tips and tricks of in terms of processes, in terms of operations, in terms of hiring, in terms of letting go of this shit, we have too much. So all of that is coming for today. But before we jump into the topic, please tell us about yourself for those of you who don't know you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Alexys Bartok. I am the founder and CEO of Process to Profit. So we are an operations consultancy and agency where we kind of hop in and help set up the systems and operations required for growing businesses, usually multi-6 and multi-7 figure companies, coaches, consultants, and agency owners. So that's kind of our bread and butter. I have a core philosophy that the infrastructure for any operations that you need, like the 3 core pillars that you have to have in order to scale and not want to die or not hate your business, is time, team, and systems. And so you have to have the time, you have to have the actual capacity and the bandwidth in order to enjoy what you're doing, to reinvest back into the business. And then you have to have the team, right? So we're kind of talking to people that are in their solo stage, so we can dive into that a little bit. But then you also have to have the systems and processes to support you, the real infrastructure to fortify the business. So that's kind of my core three pillars that every business that is scaling right now has.
Oh my God, thank you so much for that introduction. How did you get into this field? Like, what was your like, did you wake up one morning, I'm like, I want to organize businesses and create offices? Like, was it something
definitely
like
not. I love this question. I definitely did not. I actually started a few years back now as a virtual assistant in a digital marketing agency. And within a few years, I think it was about 1.5 years, 2 years, I worked my way up from VA to project manager to operations manager, director of operations, and eventually was offered a COO role. And at the time, I just started, like, for some reason, I did not love operations. I did not love what I was doing, and I probably should have left earlier than I did, and that's like a lesson I would have learned and would have taught people. But anyway, we ended up leaving each other. It was a great opportunity, and jumped into another business. I was kind of freelancing on the side for project management, and jumped in another business as an executive assistant because it was during COVID. I wanted to be a part of a bigger team and really just wanted some stability. So then during COVID, I hopped in at a multi-7-figure business as the executive assistant to the CEO. And within 4 months, I had kind of been offered the COO position. So at this point, I was like, okay, I must know something about operations. But funnily enough, and I usually leave this part out of the story, but funnily enough, I was super resistant to doing anything in operations. I thought it was really boring and it was not sexy. It was not fun. And one of my friends and mentors at the time was like, sometimes you need to do what you're good at in order to figure it out. Right? And I was like, okay, fine. So I dove in, started doing operations, and as soon as I started getting my clients wins, I became obsessed. And I think that, my core mission is enjoy the now. So from a personal standpoint, in the last 7 to 8 months, I've lost 2 family members. I lost my father and I lost my grandmother. And
I'm so sorry to hear
thank
that.
you. But through that grief and through that experience, it has allowed me to really replay all these beautiful, happy memories, right? Like so much joy and happiness from spending time with them. And I realized that all of my clients are going to die one day, which is a really intense thing to say, but
I never thought of that this way, but yeah.
right? I know, it's super intense. Like it is. And the thing is that most of my clients have either children or spouses or loved ones that they want to become spouses, right? And I think a lot of times we get lost in why we even started this business, and we get so into the weeds of the day-to-day and so stressed and overwhelmed and like we must succeed that we forget that we can create memories in this moment. And that's how my mission kind of became enjoy the now. And so once I figured all of this out, it was like operations is amazing and life-changing. And now I wake up excited for operations every day.
Wow, that was such a beautiful story in how you turned this, you said boring or not sexy, position into like such a deep, profound, meaningful thing for you. And it became a mission, essentially. That's so cool.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
awesome.
sometimes I think we forget how, this day's never going to come again. These moments will never come again. And sometimes we get so pulled down into like, oh, this client did this, or the system isn't working, or I want more sales. And we forget why we're here. And so I think kind of just bringing it back to that, you'll see me, if you follow me, hashtagging enjoy the now, because it's kind of the movement I believe in.
You don't see this, but it's literally on my phone. All we have is now. So
I love
I
it.
don't know if I told you, I think you commented, but I have it. Like this is literally my reminder. If like I don't
Yes.
know, just it's
So
there. So
connected.
I'm with you. I'm
I
with
love
you
it.
on that. Um, I guess you mentioned a little bit on enjoying your businesses, and how I don't know if that's something you observe, but how entrepreneurs they kind of fall into a trap of their own business. They want to grow it, but they get so wrapped up in it that they get overwhelmed. And I don't know if I'm sure you have met that overwhelmed entrepreneur that they are like burnt out phase, losing sleep.
Yeah.
How would you start detangling a problem like that and kind of like
Yeah.
just attacking that issue?
Yeah. I mean, the very first thing I would do would be to tell them to take a break. And I know that sounds so counterintuitive, especially to a person that is like, I have to get it done and is staying up late. But if you were to just take one weekend, if I was talking to that person and they're listening in the ear, if you were to just take one weekend where you shut everything off, turn off your Slack, turn off your notifications, shut off your entire phone, and just be with yourself and your thoughts and whoever, your loved ones that you live with, you will come back a completely different person. And the thing is when you're burnt out, it's too late. We can't build on burnout. We have to let you breathe in order to rebuild. And so that's the first step, is to just actually take a step back and be willing to say, I'm taking this weekend off. Hopefully not just a weekend, like I would say 3 days. Take 3 days off. Let you feel the uncomfort in it. By the end, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I want this every weekend. And it will change your life. Yeah, it's a real thing. I mean, addiction to chaos is really, there's a study, I think it was from the University of Queensland, that came out that most entrepreneurs have an addiction to chaos. And I see this a lot in early stage clients where they come in and we actually do a lot of the things to fix the immediate issues, and they're still working nonstop. And it's like I have to make them take a step back and figure out, what's actually happening. And I like to call it superhero syndrome, where a lot of times we will create problems in order to hop in and be the superhero and feel like, hey, we fixed this problem, we had a good day's work, we did it. But really, we just fixed a problem we started. So sometimes, I
Wow,
think...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. That's
No,
awesome.
you're
Like,
fine.
I love that. I love that analogy. That's so true. Like that's so true. That's so crazy. I've never thought of it that way. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, you're good. It's pretty crazy. And honestly, what changed for me was when I realized I was doing it in my personal life, like not just in the business, but if you start noticing this and be like, oh, is that actually a problem? Is that true? And like every time something comes up, asking that and putting it through a filter, it's actually terrifying when I look back at how dramatic life was, because I needed something to be going on. I needed to be saving the day and feeling important. And it's like when your worth is not attached to your outcome, like your client work, with your worth is not attached to how much money you make, how many clients you have, how happy your clients are, life becomes really fun. Like really, really fun. And that doesn't mean that you're not making good money and your clients aren't happy and you don't have a wait list. Like, it doesn't mean you don't have all of this, but it means that you are not affected by it either way.
Yeah. I love that you say that. And just the other day, I got into not an argument, but like not a heated exchange, but whatever, with my partner about this. And somehow I found him a simple person. And somehow that triggered me because I kind of projecting the fact that simple life, like not super complicated one, is actually something that I like and that I have. And it's hard to balance the ego of wanting to go and be bigger and go and do stuff and travel around and do all of the ego things. But somehow I realized that, dude, I kind of like simplicity and I kind of can adapt to any environment, but I don't need a lot of things to feel good and be happy. And that was a huge realization because even my partner said, I think you're projecting on me. I'm like, dude, first of all, that's awesome. You're getting better. All the psychology shit that I talk about is kind of entering. Yay. But it was true. I had this fear of what would that mean about me if my life was quite simple and that my business was easy, and that what would that mean? Would that mean that I'm not going to achieve anything because am I settling? So I think that was something I needed to kind of think about deeply.
I love that. I really love that. And I think, I like in the last year, my business has like really blown up. It's very exciting in terms of what I'm doing with clients and the client load I have. But I get asked a lot, like, what changed? Like, was it a specific tactic? Was it anything like that? And I think the big thing that changed was I was finally able to see how simple it is to have a scalable business. Like, it's so easy. And I think that's a very triggering thing to say, especially if maybe your business isn't doing super well. Because when my business wasn't doing great and people would say that, I would get so mad. I was like, it's not easy. There's so many things I have to do. I have to figure this out. I have to do all these things every day. Like all of this stuff, right? Which I think we're all guilty of. But it's like, it's so simple. And being comfortable with that actually lets, I don't know, I think it's just fun. Like the more simple something is, the easier it is to fulfill on from a business standpoint. Or if your life is more simple, the easier you are able to run out and go travel and do things because you can. So I think that there is this level of, we as a society, but especially entrepreneurs I've worked with and know, often overcomplicate to feel worthy of the outcome. Wow. If I was like, I see this so much in people that check their emails all the time, where to procrastinate, they like are checking their emails multiple times a day. And the way I test this is I have an email system, give it to your assistant. If you don't have your assistant, I hire your assistant. Like literally there's no excuse. And if you are still checking your emails or uncomfortable with someone doing that, what I have found, and this is a little bit of a generalization, right? But that is one area where we are actually easily procrastinating because we're just checking. Oh, I should respond to that one. When you take that away, it's like, oh, I actually have to do the things I need to do. And oftentimes when we just spend time doing basically dumb stuff in order to feel like we were busy, that's when we're overwhelmed and we're burnt out and we're tired. And we do that in order to feel worthy of our success. So a lot of times it's actually a self-worth internal thing. It's not necessarily a business thing at all.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to come back to one of the things that you said about, there were so many things, so we're going to be here forever. But one of the things that kind of stood out for me from what you said is this thing that we need to make things complicated in order to deserve success.
Yeah.
And actually business is super simple. What do you think makes a business simple that we tend to overcomplicate, aside from the checking emails and doing other things, that we shouldn't do?
Yeah, I think the number one place that that I've seen people get stuck on is team. I think people either bring on way too many people into the team, and then there's like actually not enough work for the level of team, and their expenses are really, really high. And so we need to cut the fat and trim the bloat. Or people do not bring on team when they should, and they are really overworked and overwhelmed. They're really afraid of letting go. So I'd say in terms of overcomplication, there's a lot of confusion around who to hire, when to hire, how much to pay people. And I think that's the number one place that is also really, really scary, because the two things that can really, really harm a business is having the wrong clients and having the wrong team. Yeah.
But let's talk about team, because you mentioned team, and we don't know who to hire and when to hire. So what is your kind of framework on who to hire in terms of, I don't know, I read it on your Facebook wall that you were saying if you're not happy when you have to pay your team, then you need to rethink your decision. Can you just explain that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So many people have asked me about that post, because I love finance. Like, I love paying team. I love running my own payroll. That's just something I enjoy doing. And I made that post after I had paid my own team, and I was like so full of gratitude and excitement to be doing that. And I thought it through, because I have a colleague and a client who right now, or previously, was complaining that she feels like all of her revenue is really going to team, and she's still having to do a lot of the work. And I hear that a lot, and I think that that's one of the quickest, I think even in the most abundant mindset, we're still like, what are our expenses? What are we spending our money on as a business owner, right? And so I think that's like the fastest way for me to see like a symptom. When you are paying your team, you're like, oh, what is this even for? It's either an internal issue, and it is like a money mindset situation, or it's that maybe the team isn't set up correctly. Maybe you're giving them too much. Maybe you don't have the right people in the right seat. And so it's really just a way for us to gauge, how do you really feel about your team? And a lot of times, if I were to ask someone that, 90% of the time, they'd be like, oh yeah, I have the best team. They're so great. They do so much. But if I say, how do you feel when you pay your team every 2 weeks? Someone might be like, it's okay, right? So then we can kind of get into the nitty gritty of what's the actual feeling there. Is the value worth the money?
Mm. And how do we fix it? Like, for example, it's not me, but I'm gonna say it as, I hate to pay my team, and it's the payroll time, and I'm like, it's gonna be hard, but let's go for it. So how do we fix that? Like, do we need to fire everyone? I was like, okay, I guess it's time to fire. Like, bye. Like, what is the solution?
Yeah, $1 million question, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. Don't fire everyone, at least not yet. I think the first thing to do is, most people aren't clear on what their team should be doing. They aren't clear on who's doing what, especially if they have multiple team members. If you just have one VA, sometimes you think that they're going to do everything, and you need to give them more. So the first thing I do, and I run clients through if they're feeling that, is really a team audit. And that starts with us breaking down, what's everyone's roles and responsibilities? What are you doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually basis, and literally just have everyone on the team fill that out, including yourself. And then we want to do, I kind of call it a litmus test, right, where we send a questionnaire to the team of like, what are you loving? What is really not your favorite? Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? Like, kind of gauging where everyone is at, because sometimes it's you, the leader, that has not really clarified who's responsible for what are the expectations and the KPIs. And sometimes it's the team member. And sometimes they just don't. They either are there for the paycheck, which means that you are not getting quality work, like they are not obsessed with what they're doing, or they just aren't into it anymore. And that happens. That happens a lot for clients, is that people, I'm sure, I know I have experiences where I worked for teams before I had my own business, and it was great. And then I just kind of was like, no, I'm not loving it anymore. And a lot of times people value security way more than honesty. And so in terms of action steps that you guys could easily do would be to start just looking at what's everyone's scorecard. What's everyone's, like, I follow Alex Sharfin's 4R scorecard. So it's role, responsibilities, results, and requirements. And results are going to be your KPIs. So get those figured out for everyone on the team, and that level of clarity will bring so much. You'll start figuring out who actually needs to be there and who doesn't.
I love that you said that, because it removes the emotions out of letting someone go, because you just literally look at the data and be like,
Yeah.
oh, well, it's nothing personal, but it's just we're not a good match anymore. So it's
Yeah.
a good way to kind of like not get into a personal,
And I think
feeling
that's
about
the
it.
key. I think that's really the key, is that you at some point have to treat your business like a business. I say it all the time. Your business is not your baby, it's an asset. And if you are starting to treat a business as an asset, you have to make data-driven decisions, especially around people. Because it's really hard. When I had a client who somebody had moved to be near their in-person office, and I came in and I was like, we got to let him go, like, when we look at everything. And it was a really hard decision, because this person had uprooted their life to work there. But in the end, it was just not the right fit. It was hurting both parties. And I think that's something we have to remember, that if it's the right decision for both the business, and if it's the right decision for the business, it's going to be the right decision for that person. Like, they will bounce back and figure out what else to do.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think it's a huge fear for a lot of entrepreneurs to be firing people, and I don't think any of them likes to do it. So if they could avoid it, then they would probably like, okay, can you do it for me? Like, can anyone else handle it but me? Because it's just, you kind of like to grow the person, and you like them and they're around you and you kind of know their family, and it's just, yeah, it's not easy, definitely.
It's not easy.
So in your pillars that you said, I think it was time, team, and I forgot the third one.
Systems. Hmm.
Systems. So let's go to systems a little bit. In terms of systemizing in a business, what are your, first of all, what is the biggest mistakes that you see in the industry that most entrepreneurs do, and what is your methodology on creating systems?
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake is that there's no outline of what all of the systems are. So most of the time, overcomplication in systems happens because no one sits down and says, okay, what is the process from A to Z? Like, typically it's like, let's just do this, and ooh, we could try that. And so we're kind of like hodgepodging a bunch together. And even if you have an SOP, that SOP might be way too long and convoluted. So what I suggest is, I call it the system skeleton. So basically my ideology is that the sales and marketing of a business is the blood. It's the lifeline of the business. You have to have it. But operations is the skeleton. So without operations, you basically have a limp blood bag. Like, what are you going to do with that? But when you put the skeleton in, it gets to grow over time. And so really it's like you start little, grow, get bigger, and now you have a fully functioning being that could walk, run, jog, whatever. So I call it a system skeleton, because we literally start from the top at marketing all the way down to fulfillment and retention. And we want to see in 15 systems or less, how does your company run? And so basically that gives us that like roadmap, an outline of what is the business. Super simplified. You cannot go more than 15. Break those into the proper departments for the business, which is typically marketing, sales, and fulfillment. And then operations fits into all of those. So that's typically what I see. And then from there, you can start doing what I call the assembly line. So I almost always start in fulfillment, because marketing and sales, in order to work with me, usually has to be working well enough that you're not struggling to, pay your bills. So usually you don't need operations until that's at least dialed in enough, even if it's just referrals. But typically fulfillment is where people feel a lot of pain, because you make a sale, but now you have to fulfill on it. And not only that, you need them to be happy, because when your fulfillment isn't dialed, when you don't have the team or the systems there, it can really affect your reputation. And reputation is currency, and you cannot get it. It's very hard to get your reputation back. So we typically start there, and we use what I call the assembly line, which obviously I did not create that. That is from Henry Ford, who, I'm just going to dive into it because I love him so much, who started the assembly line in the 1910s, like 1914, 15, during the industrialization era. And basically, he had the Model Ts, and they used to take over 12 hours to create. So they were expensive. It was a lot of work. Within a couple of years, by implementing the assembly line, he got it down to 90 minutes. And then he implemented the $5 workday, which was the first time there was ever a minimum wage. And then also he halved the amount of time people worked. So he created the 8-hour workday. So he got it down from 12 hours to under 10 seconds. So that's what we want to create for every person's business. Like, we want to create, what is that line of usually 5 phases to create the assembly line, and who is responsible for all of them, so that way production is up and quality is up, but cost is down and time is down.
I love how you know what I observed with you? Like, you have the processes you have names for every process that you do. And I love the skeleton analogy. I think it's so great. But that is like the true embodiment of the operator person who creates names for processes, and it's just awesome. It's just so awesome.
Thank you. Well, we have to make operations fun somehow, right? So
yeah, you managed to do that. But Henry Ford, yeah, I remember like how resilient he was, and
yeah.
I just he is such an awesome, incredible, example of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have some good role models right there. So in terms of fulfillment, because when you were saying that, reputation is so important and it's so hard to get it back. Do you also like dig deep into the experience, like the customer experience, the client experience, when that, when you analyze that part of the business? Because what I've been seeing is that is neglected the most, and every, aspect of growing a business is on sales and leads and closers, and the fulfillment part is just a drag, or it's just not really that awesome. I don't know. Do you also dig into that part, or this is not something that you?
Yeah, I do, because I think, in my opinion, a really good client experience just means that you have a solid system for it, and obviously a team member in order to do it. But you can automate a lot of stuff when it comes to that too. So, like, for instance, if you're setting up, one assembly line, because there's multiple assembly lines in fulfillment. So the first one would be onboarding, right? So what is the couple of phases that someone has to go through in onboarding? When you break that down, it might be like, okay, what's a client gift that should get sent? What call should they go on? What's their intake form? Like, there's different pieces that when you create a process, you can really hone in and just add, cool, checklist. Did we get those things done? Did we hop on that call and get a feedback form? Like, I think it's sad, but I think that the bar is actually set pretty low for a great client experience. And really, if you set up the system and you have somebody on your team, whether it's automated or a VA or a client success specialist, hopping in, making sure those things are done, you will create an incredible, incredible experience.
How do you think maintaining that degree of service, like, is there any way? Because I think, yes, if you have the onboarding and everything is smooth, there still has to be a part of like delivering on your promises and making sure that they are happy, and there's this constant, feedback, evaluation, and how their experience was. I think that's something that can be incorporated as well. I don't know if there is any way that we can process that too. Like, I'm thinking on top of my head, but Probably not.
I think it depends on the type of business, right? I mean, I have yet to find very few things that I could not systematize. So, like for instance, a agency, right? Because I usually work with coaches and agency owners. So, an agency model, if it's just like an ongoing retainer, really the thing that a lot of people are missing is just having KPIs. And if you have one account manager assigned to a client, and they every Friday send a Loom video with KPIs, like boom, that's already so much better. Get on a call once a month and send a feedback form once a month. Most of that is automated except for the Loom video, which might take 5 minutes, right? Same with like even a coaching company. Let's say it's a group model, like a group coaching model. I would suggest that you have an automated feedback form that gets sent at least once a month at the end. And it's not just feedback, like how are we doing? It's how are you doing? You know, what did you succeed on this month? What do you wish you had succeeded on this month? What do you need help with? And I really think it's just going, you know, setting up those automations of just forms and then having someone on the team to check it already makes a difference, because then you can also say, you know, say it's a group coaching program. Do you have any issues that you would really love to be assessed? What are they? Would you prefer this to be a one-on-one? And now you've created this incredible high-touch experience, which really it's a form and it only alerts you if they checked yes.
Wow. Yeah, you can really systemize everything.
See?
Yeah, I'm like, dude, oh, well, I haven't thought of it that way, I guess. Yeah, I mean, with high level as well. Do you have any suggestions as far as team management software goes that you'd like to recommend to clients or entrepreneurs listening to this show?
Yeah, great question. I think that's such a hot thing, right? Like what softwares?
They're jumping onto like a new shit every single week. Like,
every week.
Like,
yeah. I mean, in the end, that's the answer, right? Like whichever one you like and you're actually going to use, that's the one I suggest. If I have a client who doesn't have one, which actually a lot of my clients, sometimes they don't have one, which is impressive. I don't know how you could run your business without one. But if they don't have one, I will almost always put them onto ClickUp, because I really think ClickUp is very, very, very scalable. Its automations are far superior to anything I've found anywhere else. And I just love it so much that I have a ClickUp specialist on my team to help clients with it. But I've tried most of them, right? I've tried Asana, I've done Trello, I've tried Monday, I've done Basecamp, like I've Notion, I've done almost all of them. And I think in the end, it's whichever one you're actually going to use. I think we have to be careful jumping to too many different, like I think every year a new project management software comes out. So for me, I'm like, I'll make sure someone on my team knows how to use it, but we don't use it internally.
Do you feel, and this is something I observed, but maybe you can tell me about this, when we talk about complicating our businesses, aside from jumping from one project manager software to another, do you feel like entrepreneurs, they just jump into like softwares in general, like whether it's an emailing software or it's just a team chat software, like there's like a newest hype and like everyone is jumping in it, and it's just like the whole team has to now adjust to a new software and like a new communication platform. I don't know if this is just my clients or yours are the same, but I just like, and I'm like, let them have fun with it, I guess. It's just something that I observe, that they have this, you know, platform obsession or software obsession, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually important to have a protocol around that, because as visionaries, we often have so much fun jumping from thing to thing, and it's exciting and it's shiny and it's new, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. However, it can give your team extreme fatigue, and it can actually really affect the culture. And that's both on softwares, that's on different ideas. Like if you're hopping from let's do a webinar to let's do a VSL to let's do organic, like there's so many different ideas that pop up in our heads sometimes, that I think that there does need to be some type of protocol around, like, for instance, I use Notion, but no one on my team is on my Notion. Notion is like a fun place for me to blop down ideas, mess around with things, have fun with it. It does not touch my team. And if something, I'm like, okay, I really do love this, I really want us to put this in place, I would hold it up against our quarterly plan and pitch it to the team, because I think that, you know, obviously, like with clients, I suggest they pitch it to their leadership team and get buy-in, because I think there has to be consistent buy-in from the whole team. And if it's just one person saying, "No, we're going to do this," and then they typically change their mind a lot, which is so common. We just have to set up a little bit of a barrier where it's like you have your own little playground and then you have the team.
And I love that you pointed out how you kind of need to introduce it to more than yourself. I mean, if you love it, you kind of need to kind of let the whole team, or some of the members at least, buy into that, software. So it's not just you imposing it on everyone else and you're like, do you like it? No, So that's what Alexys was saying. And I guess where I wanted to go after this is team culture. Because I think that's so important to mention as well, in an organization, and just want to hear your tips on building good team culture.
Yeah, I think one of the main things to figure out is what you want the company to feel like. I think sometimes we mentioned this a little at the top, that we forget that we chose to start this business. Sometimes we get so sucked into our goals and where we're headed and what we're doing that we forget that we get to lay the groundwork, we get to decide what it is. So it's really figuring out what are your core values and what do you want not only your team, but what do you want your clients to feel when they interact with the business? How do you want your team to feel at the end of each day? Do they want, like, you don't want anyone to dread coming to work, right? Just like you don't want to dread your business. So it's like, what are those core values that you feel like? For me, one of them is resourcefulness, and another one is integrity. Like, those are things that my business will always run on. You have to be resourceful. You have to have integrity. I know a client has like confidence, like different things that are just, this is who I am and what the business represents. And really just having that open belief of, everyone that works here will feel that way too. And it should be empowering. I think sometimes we get stuck into this idea of like, I'm a manager and you're managing people. And I said to someone today, I was like, you're not their warden. Like, your employees, your team is not your children. It should be a fun place to be where we all choose to be here. Just like you chose to start your business, your team decides to work with you. And that's not a small thing. You decide to work with them. And so it's honoring that as well and having respect for one another.
How can someone work with you? Do you have some availability to help salvage some businesses and create some awesome operations?
Yeah, right now I think I just announced it yesterday. I'm on a wait list for one-on-one,
I know.
which is
I'm like, girl.
which is amazing. But I do have another offer that isn't waitlisted. So the absolute best way to find me is on Facebook, just Alexys Bartok, or the Facebook group Process to Profit. I try to post every day, very often, and then obviously DMing me or reaching out to get some more information. And I typically need to hop on a call to audit kind of what's going on in your business and see what's up.
Okay, that's awesome. And so what are your plans for the future? I don't know if maybe that's not covered, like very overrated question, but I just want to know what are you planning as far as your 5-year plan with what you do?
Ooh, actually, I have not been asked that question in a really long time. So that's super interesting. Yeah, so from a business perspective, look at you getting me to dream, or getting me to like vision cast. Yeah, so I'm very excited about this offer. I'm currently bringing on someone to really build out the tech portion. I think, my ideal situation is to have people come on, have a dedicated account manager to really help with all of the hiring, help with all of the tech, which we already have some of it, but just my goal would for it to be so high touch that it, kind of like we were talking about with client experience, of how is it even possible that it's scaling, and I can see it. So I'm really excited for that.
One more question, which when I was asked like the other day when I was guesting on a show, I was like, it was a curveball question, but let's see if we can handle it.
Okay.
So what would be the one advice that you would tell your younger self?
I think if I could have, well, honestly, the number one thing I would have, if I was open to it, that I would have loved to have heard a few years earlier would have been that you don't have to create chaos. That was a pretty recent realization, and my life has changed so drastically, so quickly once I was able to notice that, you don't have to, nothing has to be wrong in order to have a good life. It's okay to just have a nice time and to feel good and enjoy life, which sounds so simple, but so true.
Wow. I love it. I love it. That's such a, I mean, that's like literal or the arching conversation that we had is this addiction to chaos. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I wish I had that wisdom. Where do you get that?
Just living life. It happens. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Alexys. And come back anytime. I'll think about if there's something else. Maybe we should, have like a full on how to hire people, like what would the qualities be. I think that would be super interesting for the listeners to know your take on it. And I think operations is something that you can talk about forever anyway.
Yes, true.
So, I know.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute blast.